Good morning and welcome to my blog, Wisdom for Today. I'm so glad that you decided to visit me today so we can talk a little bit about what it means to be discipled in Jesus Christ and how do we live out our faith in this ever-changing world and stir up the gift that God has put inside of us to preach the Word of God in Jesus Christ. Now in January, I told you we were going to take every third week and we were going to talk about some character in history and how he influences our Christian faith today. I love these stories because these people often came from environments that were very difficult and had to overcome great hardships to grow into the person that God intended them to be, and often became very strong and influential people. The first Tuesday that we started this in January, we talked about George Washington Carver and what an influence he was for Jesus Christ. He was born an enslaved man and unjustly enslaved, an Afro-American, but he rose to be one of the greatest revered scholars in American history. And, and he fought for people of color's rights. And he also became a great healer and helped found the Tuskegee Institute. And then secondly, we talked about Katie Luther. She was Martin Luther's wife. And she was one of the few people who took the first step into creating Christian publishing by publishing her husband's sermons in a small book called Table Talk. She would invite young seminarians over to her house and she would take notes on what her husband was talking about and published a bestseller from it. And to this day, we have a tradition of Christian books, partly because of because of Katie Luther. And today I want to talk to you about Billy Sunday. And Billy Sunday is known for two great things in his life. First of all, he was a hitter for the White Sox, for the Chicago White Sox, and had many years of fame. And then after that, he became a great evangelist, which had worldwide fame in preaching the gospel. But before he was an evangelist and before he was a baseball player, he was an abandoned child. His mother, who was a washerwoman, lost her husband and could not afford to take care of her 3 children, and so she abandoned them at the Soldiers' Orphan Home. Billy grew up on the streets partly and learned very quickly that he had to make his own way by making some cash. And he made that cash by connecting himself to some of the local baseball clubs. He volunteered to be runners for when a ball was hit out of bounds or out of the field. He ran and he got the ball and he brought it back. And eventually he was hired for that job. And then after a while, some of the team managers and also team players noticed that this young man, Billy, could run and he could hit. And it wasn't long before he was recruited to be a baseball player, and he shot to fame because of his ability to hit the ball and to run so quickly. But Billy fell into alcoholism rather quickly. And in his own notes and his sermons, he told audiences that he spent many of his days playing baseball while being drunk. But his conversion happened in a pretty wonderful way. And I just want to read to you from one of his sermons where he talks about his conversions. He said, 29 years ago, I walked down the street of Chicago in the company of some ball players who were famous in this world. Some are dead now. And we went into a saloon. It was Sunday afternoon, and we got pretty tanked up. And then we went and sat on the corner. I never go by that street without thanking God for saving me. It was a vacant lot at the time. We sat down on the curbing across the street from a company of men and women who were playing musical instruments and horns, flutes, and slide trombones. And others were singing gospel hymns, and that I used to hear my mother sing way back when I was a child in an old church where we used to go and attend Sunday school. God painted on the canvas of my recollection a memory, a vivid picture of the scenes of other days and other faces. Many have long since turned to dust. And I sobbed, and a young man stepped out and said to me, "We're going to the Pacific Garden Mission. Won't you come down to the mission? I'm sure you'll enjoy it. You'll hear the story of other alcoholics and how they've been saved, of women tell how they've been saved from the red light district." I arose and said to the boys, "I'm through, and I'm going to Jesus Christ. We've come to a parting of the ways." And so I turned my back on them. Some of them laughed, and some of them mocked me, and some of them gave me encouragements. Others never said a word. Billy found a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ that changed his life. And then it was time to go back to playing baseball. One season was over and another had started. And many of his fellow players had heard him preach, and there was a joke running around the ball club that now he was effeminate because he liked this religion stuff. And when Billy came back, he came back with a little chip on his shoulder, wanting to show the other men on his team that he could still play baseball. And I just want to read to you from his sermon. He said, "I was playing right field. Mike Kelly was catching, and John G. Clarkson was pitching. We had two men out, and they had a man on second and one on third. And Charlie Bennett, their old catcher, was at bat. And catcher had 3 balls and 2 strikes. I saw Charlie swing hard and heard the bat hit the ball with a terrific boom. Bennett had smashed it right on the nose, and I saw the ball rise into the air and saw that it was going clear over my head. I could judge within 10 feet of where the ball might light. And I turned my back on the ball and I ran. The field was crowded and people, and I yelled, 'Stand back!' And the crowd opened like the Red Sea for the rod of Moses. I ran on, and as I ran, I made a prayer. It wasn't a theological one either. I'll tell you that. I said, 'God, if you ever helped a man, help me now. Get that ball. And you haven't got very much time to make up your mind either. I want to show them a Christian can play baseball.' I ran and jumped over a bench and stopped. I thought I was close enough to catch it. I turned my back on it, and it was over my head, and I jumped up and shoved out my left hand, and the ball hit it, stuck. At the rate it was going and the momentum, it carried me on, and I fell under feet of a team of horses. The crowd yelled out in alarm, but then I jumped up with the ball in my hand, and they let out a cheer." I love that story. Billy trying to prove something, although many people told me the ball was clearly out of bounds, but yet he proved something that day. But shortly after that, he did leave playing baseball simply because he was an older man, and he went into preaching. And he was a part of fighting for sobriety movement in Chicago. And he helped many alcoholics come to faith in Jesus Christ. Billy had a rough beginning, but he had an ending victorious in Jesus because he leaned on the Jesus that saved him, because he came to him. I love his story because God used every inch of Billy. His love for baseball, his tragic departure of his mother, his sweet memories of sitting in Sunday school with his family. God used all of those to preach the gospel. May he do the same with us. I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday, if you can come, and also on Sunday. God's blessings and have a great day.